Welcome to another episode of Unplugged with Nicki Marie. Today's guest, we've been rambling and jambling in the waiting room before pressing record. We should have recorded that whole thing, Tyler.
I know.
But we are a mom and a dad who present ourselves on social media. We are forward-facing public figures or influencers. I don't use that word.
I know. It's awful.
More. Here's a little fun story. He is an author, a best-selling author, hot off the press, which we're going to talk about his new book, Tidy Up Your Life, which was bedside for me. Not read. So the kids are like, Mom, what are you doing? I said, I'm embracing school reading time with mom reading time instead of my device.
Yeah.
The fun story I want to tell is we were at a Netflix movie premiere together in New York. And I am about to launch my vlog of that night onto YouTube, and you're in it.
I can't wait. I can't wait.
You're in it. You're in the cotton candy line with me. And we did not know one another. And then I posted little snippets, and my audience actually led me to. They're like, "That is Tiny Dad. That's Tyler Moore." And here we are, full circle, baby.
Yeah. Now, I do want to know did your kids push Alec Baldwin and his children out of the way in the food line, or was that just my children?
That was your children, but I went up to Alec Baldwin.
Did you?
I did. I saw him come into the theater when we were watching the movie. So the movie was Spellbound.
Which was great.
Right? And I did not know there was a divorce. Just spoiler alert.
Yeah, I know. I didn't either. And which we'll get into. I mean, my parents divorced when I was in the 8th grade.
Oh.
And that actually, as a kid of divorce, I didn't know that was actually a story that was underrepresented in movies. And to show that the two parents can somehow sort of get along and communicate with one another and have these separate yet still like beautifully messy lives woven together. I actually thought it was beautiful.
Yeah, and I cried because I was unprepared. I was unprepared entirely, where I've talked about this on a podcast before. I thought that it was just a screening.
Mm-hmm.
So when we got there and the red carpet and the lights, camera, action, and my kids in white socks with Crocs and sweatpants and hoodie, and I'm like, I looked like I was like going to a softball banquet.
Mm-hmm. No, that was one of the best nights. I mean, we didn't leave that party. It was like 10 o'clock. They had just brought out ice cream cones on a silver platter. I mean, and we should name that the after party was at the Plaza. I am a normal, average dad. We live in Queens.
I took
the subway. Yeah, we took the subway to get there. And my girls were like, that was the best night ever.
It was unbelievable.
And I was like, you know what it is? But it's one of those like only in New York sort of experiences, but also it's cool when people sort of find one another and you just never really know, so that was really cool for us to then connect. It's interesting because we have these online personas that are part of the story. And then we have who our actual personas are when the camera sort of stops. And as Tidy Dad, there are all of these questions that I get of this, like, so your life must be like perfectly put together. And it's like, there are aspects of my life that feel a little bit less messy than others, but I'm also a New York City public school teacher. Yes. I teach 5th grade. I have children of really diverse learning needs. I'm in a special education co-taught classroom. I'm the gen ed teacher. I have another teacher who's a special ed teacher. We are responsible for navigating all of these different learning needs and learning, issues. But I'm also always, people are like, oh, so if you have ADHD, this must mean that academically you are below all of your peers. And I'm like, that is a huge misconception. Mm-hmm. Absolutely not. A learning disability does not in many ways impact academic ability. And so it's fascinating to unpack all of these layers as Tidy Dad. Yes. But yet, I still have to share tips and inspiration. And I wrote a book and
yes,
and I
want to dive into that. And you just framed everything that I want to talk about from the standpoint of the reasons I'm interested in this conversation so much are the mental load that families have today. We talked about it a little bit in the pre-room. The single motherhood, the ADHD, the fact that you are a dad living it and fixing systems at home while also a school teacher of fifth graders. Like that's
Yeah.
just such an incredible medley for me because it's all the areas that I'm interested in. It's all the things that I feel like I'm just going to say it. I feel like I'm really good at motherhood because of my nature to unconditionally love my children, to have fun, to live for this. I live for motherhood. Where I'm stuck are the things that we're not always talking about is my executive functioning is different than the parenting coaches who are saying an after school plan and, the way to conscious parent. I'm like, holy crap. I was not raised with electronics. I wasn't raised with the inability to just go out and run around in the neighborhood, which is what I did. That was great for my ADD. It was all outside, diverse play with your entire neighborhood. And now after school for me is like the kids are in the house. They come in off the bus. They want a snack. They want their device. They're exhausted mentally. And you have this expectation of what after school is supposed to be like. So let's just dive right into how did this take me back? How did this happen? Because I want to learn
Yes.
everything, but I want to know the beginning from you.
I know. Yeah. So,
And I'm holding up the Tidy Up Your Life book, which is written by a dad.
yeah.
What? Because I don't understand, right? I come from a family of amazing men, but those men did not talk about their emotions. They didn't
No.
talk about any of this. And I think my presence online does not show my heart for men because I'm usually speaking on behalf of the woman. So when I see you on that curb having that breakdown, what was going on in your head?
Yeah. So the tangible thought that I had, that even taking it back to that moment, it is still heartbreaking to me, was, in New York City, you have to wait for the crosswalk. You stand at the corner
Oh, yeah.
and you see all the traffic going past. And I had this tangible thought of, it might just be easier to walk out into traffic right now. That might actually be the easier sort of decision. Now, where did that come from? I had this overwhelming feeling that I should just be incredibly happy and grateful. I had, two children at the time, typically developing, growing, healthy. I had a 2-year-old and a 9-month-old. I had a wife who was incredibly supportive. We had tried to figure out that balance of work. She was working part-time. I was working full-time. My brother-in-law was like our nanny. He lived in our building. He would come upstairs, and it was the ideal sort of situation. But yet at school, I had these pressures and expectations, and I had this load that I was carrying as a dad. And a lot of it was, you need to snap out of this. You need to stop thinking the way that you are, and you just need to be grateful. And I remember Googling, and I was like, is like, and I don't even know the right term for it because people don't talk about it. I was like, is like postpartum depression something that men experience? I was like, is this, is there something sort of chemical that's going on with me right now, biological, that makes me have these stressors? And I felt so alone in those struggles, to the point where dads don't share at the playground. You don't like walk up to a dad and it's like, hey, how you doing? And you're like, you know what? I'm really struggling at work. I'm really struggling to balance raising these kids. I'm
Yeah.
exhausted. People don't talk about this. And so I remember having that feeling, and I immediately called my wife, and I was like, I just thought this. And she was like, we've got to get you help.
Yeah.
And that started this 3-year therapy journey, where I remember questions to my therapist of like, is there something wrong with me? Like, why? Why am I thinking like this? Why can't I just be happy? And she was like, there isn't anything wrong with you. You just think and feel differently. And like, I can help you unpack this. But I often think of, what if I hadn't had that moment? What if my wife hadn't said, I think you need to get help? What if I hadn't gone to a therapist? my story would have been
Yeah.
completely different.
This is so important to me. I feel emotional because I'm raising a son, and it's like I think society, we're coming so far with like sharing emotions and mental health. We never talked about this shit when I was a kid. My
Mm-mm.
parents would have never come online and had resources to feel like, "Oh wow, okay, this guy is going through something. Holy shit." I feel the same way, but I'm surrounded by all these macho men who act like nothing is a big deal. And they're out
Mm-mm.
on the golf course, laughing about their miserable moments at home with their wife, and they're not sexually fulfilled. Like, I think the picture that we have of men's mental health is that there's escapism from the family, because that's what we see a lot of
Mm-hmm.
online is the
Mm-hmm.
escapism, the affairs, the what is happening to men when they have kids. And you're talking about there is an aftermath of having kids. It just shows up differently. And you're speaking to a side of it that is so important for men and women to hear.
I
Because we
think
just
so.
automatically assume that men are just, freak out when they have kids and go make the wrong decisions and leave it all on the wife. So
Mm-hmm.
let's please
Mm-hmm.
highlight when you're thinking about these thoughts of not being enough for some reason. Was it that you wanted to provide more? Is it that you wanted to be around your kids more and not have take me into
Yeah.
that, like peel back the layers a little bit.
There are still all of these societal pressures that are put on men and women, and this need to justify decisions, even
Yeah.
for women of, oh, so you've decided to stay home?
Oh,
Must be
absolutely.
so easy.
Yep.
Yeah, you give up your yeah, it's so easy for you to be home, with those kids all day. And these fights between like the moms who work outside of the home versus the moms who are that
Oh, I see
it's
it
like
all the time on all the
we're
time.
constantly
Yep.
battling, and I'm like, that was all weighing on me,
Yeah.
was this sort of pressure that I felt, especially being in New York City. This It's like even hyper sort of intensified. But yet I was standing there crying and had to figure out what to do next.
That's an amazing story. And all I can think about is just how much we are trying to impress other people at times or go the route of least resistance,
Mhm.
right? Or go the way, the opportunity. When you were talking about teaching and having your second child, all I could think about was after my first child, I was in corporate. I got this crazy promotion. I took on, right? It was like, I need you to take on these teams. I need you to make cuts. I need you to structure it. You're the person to do it. And I was like, holy shit. How many women can say that they got back from maternity leave and like rocked it? It was like Sheryl Sandberg era of lean in.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I was reading that book and I was like, I'm going to do this. And then after my second child, who Chase, by the way, was a twin, and we delivered his twin was a stillborn Gracie.
Oh my gosh.
That was the tipping. Everybody, right, that has a
Yes.
story has their tipping point. And Gracie was my tipping point where I got back to work and I looked around at people and I said, I don't even like most of these people. And I am pretending every day that I am happy and I'm in the mission when I know there's a bunch of bullshit around me. And suddenly it's like all the stuff that happened to me happened for me, where I
Mhm.
was like, this is not authentic for me
Mhm.
anymore. This changed. Everything changed. And I don't think enough of us are talking about that. After kids, things change. And it's not what everybody tries to warn you is the negative, right? I've had female bosses that are like, when I was like you, I would, you can do this. You can have your kids. I used to show up at my kids' soccer field in my Louboutins. And I'm like, that's not me. I want to show up in my filthy, dirty, salt stained Uggs.
Mhm.
I don't want to do that corporate badass. Look at this woman walking onto the soccer field. She could still show up. And I suddenly was like, I feel everything in me to lean out. And I
Mhm.
just wonder if there's a similar thing where we saw this family, we wanted to be all in on family.
Mhm.
So now what? So
Mhm.
take me back to the cleaning the room, the changing the room around, and what
Yeah.
light bulb went off for you with that process?
Yeah, so in order to help, like my wife, she deserves a like gold medal. I mean, when you have a spouse or partner or even kids who are dealing with sort of what I would say is a mental health sort of crisis, that spiral of anxiety and
Yeah.
depression, and also just questioning. Like, she was able to step in and say, okay, let me help. So she went to the library and she checked out Marie Kondo's books.
Oh,
So
yeah.
Marie Kondo, the life, the magical art of tidying up, sparked joy. And
So
so
wait, what
she
year
was
was this? Sorry to interrupt. What year
this
was this?
was this was 2018. So this
Okay.
was before her show came out. So I feel like
Yes.
this was still like organically finding
Yes.
Marie Kondo. And we read that book and we used it as our guide because it was like an impartial sort of person, that it was like, okay, we are going through bedding right now. Let's see, what does Marie say about bedding? But I remember I skipped to the end. And she has this whole section at the end about, when people have gone through these tidying marathons, they realize something about themselves. They have changes in relationship, career, whatever. And we were still really early into the process. And I was like, this is a load of crap. You cannot tell me that tidying up my underwear drawer is going to lead me to this life realization. But then, as books do sometimes, it sort of slapped me in the face at the end.
Right? When you switched that room, there was something that happened to you with the tidying process. So go back to the Marie Kondo and
Mhm.
all the stuff that you were learning. What happened? Because I had a boss who once said, the way the inside of your car looks represents your entire life. And I was like, whoa, I
It
don't.
is. It
So,
is. It
so
is.
talk about
Because
that.
what everybody wants to do is literally tackle every
Every
category
drawer,
of their
pour
house
out
at
the
one
drawer,
time.
pour out
No.
the entire closet, and then it's on the
Or
floor and you leave, you abandon the mission.
yes, yes, yes.
Okay.
Or they choose categories where they have to talk to people about it. Like, your kids, they don't care what extension cord that you mom like. They really don't care. Like, you can decide, which ones do you like? Do you like the orange ones? Do you like the white ones because they actually fit in? Do you like the ones with multiple prongs? Do you like the ones that are a little bit like,
Yeah.
whatever it is, you decide. And then there is this larger question of like, you determining what is just enough. Like, even for socks and underwear, like, what is just enough? We wash our clothes at the laundromat once a week. Like, realistically, like 10 pairs is probably enough.
Yeah.
There is not a season of my life where I am going 30 days without washing clothes, so I
Yeah.
don't need 30 pairs.
Right.
Like your
No, it's
extension
just what
cords.
what is
How
that
many,
personality
what,
type of quantity? So I have friends who I am drawn to. My friend Jess, for example, she lives in California. She is such a minimalist without ever having used that word. She
mhm.
doesn't use the word. She doesn't try to be. She is quality over quantity. Her wardrobe is amazing. She feels good in everything she wears. She knows where all the shit is in her house. She just lives this life of like, she knows the cafe that she wants to go to get her favorite croissant. And when she goes there, she's not going to dilly dally with all the other things on the
Mhm.
menu. It's like so just focused. And I am drawn to her because she's just decisive. And I am the complete opposite.
Well, it may be where, it doesn't feel groundbreaking maybe for everyone listening, but for you, you brought up the electrical cords for a reason.
Yeah.
Probably if you unearthed
Yeah.
what's actually behind that mess, what I heard was this idea of, when you don't know where something is, you then go and buy it.
Mm,
Okay. So
mm.
what problems does that present? Like, when you're overbuying, it then impacts your budget.
Yes.
But then you're like, you have this pressure as a single mom to provide for your family solely, which then you're like, okay, there I am again buying those electrical cords. Like, it then perpetuates this cycle where you're like, oh my gosh, like, am I a bad mom because I'm not like buying my kids the things that they may need? And then when I don't have the cord, like, this shows that I'm just this hot mess. And
Yeah.
so it's when we start to unearth what are some of those feelings that come up
Yeah.
from the clutter. I feel like that's when there can be power, is
Yeah.
just asking yourself, what's actually underneath this mess?
Yeah.
And then,
There's right.
when
It's
you
people
sort
have
of tackle,
emotional attachments to objects. Like, so
Mhm.
I'm thinking in my head, I'm thinking of a brown cord. And I can't get rid of that cord because it was my grandparents' cord.
But also when you, even naming that,
Yeah.
you can establish your criteria for what to keep and what to move out. That it's like that brown cord. If that brown cord has that like value and meaning to you, which I think that that's very beautiful,
Yeah.
because I think that
Like I
the
remember
goal
where it
is,
was in their house.
yes, to
Yeah.
be surrounded by the things that like bring joy, but yet are you honoring that like memory by having it stuffed in the bottom of all of
Right.
these other cords? And I think that it's when it's so easy to make yourself seem really like it sounds silly,
Yeah.
but yet it's
We're
actually not.
it's also where the older it's not even the older I get, the more aware I get of how overly like the consumption level and consumerism right now is insane. It's
Mhm.
insane. And I see it with my kids. My son is a minimalist. I never taught him that. He just wants to wear the same 3 hoodies on repeat, the same 3 pairs of black pants on repeat, the same 1 pair of shoes. Literally, the Crocs that you saw at the
Mhm.
Netflix event
Mhm.
are on his feet today in the snow. Because he's like, we won't have recess outside today. It's a half day. Like, he's simple. And my daughter will see something and want it and need it and fixate on it. And I have this pair of UGG slides, but I want that pair too, because these are I'm going to grow out of. So she's got that other trait of more is better. And I'm trying to teach her, and this may not be the right route to go, but I'm like, when she uses her money to buy herself a Lululemon $120 hoodie, literally 10 years old, I don't look at it as, oh, she shouldn't have the Lululemon brand. I look at it as quality over quantity.
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
spent that $100 from grandpa on that sweatshirt. Take care of it. Oh, it got a stain on it. Here's how we're going to remove the stain. And instead of like 20 hoodies from Walmart, Target, whatever, we've got the 2 hoodies that we wear that she feels
Which
good
I
in.
which I actually I think that that's great,
So
because I
that
think
that
that
is a
what you're
step.
doing is even on the part of your kids, it's like you're helping them to develop criteria for what they choose versus what they don't. And even your daughter, like you're able to set the clear boundary, which is like,
Yeah,
if that's how you want to
this
spend
is
your
cycle.
money, yes, I know, but that's fine. And then
No,
for
it's
her to
cycle
be able
breaking, and
to,
I laugh because my mom still has my blazers from
oh,
1988 hanging in the closet. Like, she will not get rid of a thing, but then she's so proud, like, these are back in. Look at the rugbies. These are back in. And I'm like, holy shit, these haven't left the
I know.
house. That's a lot of stuff. How do
Hmm.
you find the stuff you want to wear? Or do you just pick up whatever is in front of you because there's no way you have a plan? So
No,
I'm
and it's
loving.
like that's fine until it's not. Like even with your like it's fine until you start to see that like the stuff is getting in the way of what you might actually want or need. And as Tidy Dad, I started because we had so many friends who were moving from New York City to the suburbs.
Yeah.
And because their apartments, it felt like the walls were closing in. And so I was like, I am sick and tired of losing all of our friends to the suburbs. And I was like, what if I take my teacher skills and I'm just going to lead these like sessions for people to come? And I like rented space and I was like, let me teach the parents and the kids how to tidy some of these
Oh, I love
principles.
that. Yeah.
But, nobody showed up. It's like I had like 2 parents show up, but then I realized on Instagram, I was like, oh,
Yes.
I got like 15 likes. I was like, so
That's
that
what
means that
that
15 people saw it. So that's when I took things online, because I had so many friends who ditched the apartment, but yet they then took on maintenance for the house, a commute that was 2 hours each way into the city every day. And they were like, life is happening to me as opposed to the other way around. And they were like, we had this little apartment. Like
yeah.
like I just upsized these other areas of life. And so I try to tell people that like I don't think everybody should live in New York City, because my rent would go up and there'd be
Mhm.
more people at the coffee shop
Mhm.
where I want to go. But
Yes.
I don't think that people often consider sort of the domino effect of what happens when there is that decision that's made. And like even with your mom, like it may not be the case, but like many people feel so burdened by their stuff. Or I get a lot of empty nesters who are like, I pursued more and more and more from the time that my kids were born to the times
Mm-hmm.
that they left for college. We got the bigger house. I
Yes.
took on more responsibility at work. They're like, now they left and I have all their stuff. And
Oh
I
yeah.
tried to give it to my kid, and my kid is like, why'd you keep all that stuff? I didn't
Right.
want it in the first place.
Right.
And they're like, now I'm dealing with all of this stuff that I had, and I'm left with like, what was all of that for? And so it's, each of us has decisions to make, but I do think everyone reaches that point where they're like, okay, the mess is now like impacting my life and I
Yes.
need to do something about it.
Right. Okay. So what would you say? So I'm going to go into a little more rapid fire of like the things that I need to know, because if I need to know them, there's a good chance my audience needs to know them too.
Mm-hmm.
After school life for a
Yeah.
working parent, this is the biggest. I feel like I've got morning routine down, and now after school routine is like this for so many parents. And I know we're talking about space, but I know that you
Yes.
also go hand in hand with like the life
Mm-hmm.
structure, calendar
Mm-hmm.
stuff, right? So most of the people that I'm talking to are like, okay, two working parents, the kids get off the bus. We don't want them to have too much electronics. They have to do their homework. They have to bathe.
Mm-hmm.
They have to eat. You have to eat, try to eat as a
Yeah.
family. I mean, that's like when you see a family sitting down, eating together and cleaning up the kitchen together, that's like a big, when we do that,
Oh,
I'm like,
it's
yes,
yes.
I
Yes.
am the best. We did that tonight. So just let's talk about that after school pressure that we're putting on ourselves. But what is also realistic? Is there a structure? Have you tried 50 structures and now you
Mm-hmm.
found one that you're like, if I could sell this structure, it would be this? Like, just talk to me.
Yeah.
I'm so lost and
So
open-minded.
the biggest thing for me that I feel like has helped is that non-negotiable must be in bedtime date.
Okay.
What is that time? For me, that is 7:30 p.m.
Ooh,
I
all right.
do not
Yeah.
want, and my oldest is 10,
Yeah.
my youngest is 4. My 10-year-old, or she's almost 10.
I'm gonna move a
She's
little.
like, yeah,
I'm gonna get comfy. I'm gonna start rocking
she's
the,
like,
the Alex Cooper couch here.
yes. She's like, all my friends, they're able to be up and about their house until 8:30 or 9 o'clock at night. And I was like, that's fine for them.
Yeah.
I need all 3 of you in your bed at 7:30. That
Okay.
is when I am like, dad, off the clock.
Oh, all right.
Now, that hard line in the sand has been transformational for us as a family. But that backwards mapping, I think that it can be really helpful for
Yes.
parents, but also for kids, because you probably know, like, do you have
So
when do
I want to
what
play
is
with this a
your,
little bit. I want to play with
yeah,
this because when I listen to podcasts, I'm like, all right, get into the nitty gritty so that I can like take pieces of it. So you saying that, it's funny because I don't think of it like that. Why am I expecting my kids to know the structure when we don't have an exact structure? They're
mm-hmm,
in after school sports some days. Some days we have nothing. They have an hour on their iPads, but that hour doesn't always work out if there's a sports night and homework. And then my son was reading his book. My daughter fell asleep before reading hers. And I'm putting the weight of the world on my shoulders, but I'm taking it out on my kids.
mm-hmm,
And I don't want to do that.
mm-hmm,
So the
which
line
is,
in the sand today is I'm talking to you. This is therapy for me. How can I backward engineer it where bedtime is my favorite time of day to lay in bed with my kids, put on Young Sheldon, or
mm-hmm,
You Are So Not Invited to My Bar Mitzvah, or
mm-hmm,
just go with, we have like our 3 things that we watch, or Gymnastics
yeah,
Academy. I'm mentioning
uh-huh,
these in case other
oh yeah,
parents want cute shows to watch.
yeah, yeah,
And we snuggle before bed. And that's like, I
yeah.
need that.
So
So,
if
yeah.
you're like, okay, 9 o'clock is the line in the sand, that means everybody's in their bed at 9 o'clock. I still do this to this day.
Mhm.
7:30 is our time.
Yep.
I at 5:30, I set a 2-hour timer on the kitchen clock.
Okay.
That timer is for me, and I watch it. And I have these little like timestamps every day, 2 hours before, because that then initiates the like, if we have not started dinner yet, by like 5:30, like we've got to get dinner going.
Yeah.
It then, because
Yes.
it's easy for things to sort of like,
Oh, yeah.
log up. But it could be, okay, 9 o'clock, you want your kids in bed. What would it look like then to say 8:30 is when we start the show? 8:30 is our that 8:30 we know is show night. I'm a kid of the
I would
90s.
feel
I
great if
remember
that. Yeah.
TGIF, and it was like we knew what time the show started.
Yes.
8:30 is like it. And your kids could start to also look forward to every night we know 8:30 is like showtime, which is great. But then, okay, what does that other hour and a half look like? What does it mean? What is happening at 8 o'clock?
Mm-hmm.
Then what's happening at 7:30? What's happening and you just start to backwards map. But with routines, if you can tangibly name what the problem is, and it sounds like for you, it's like
It's me. I
feeling
forget.
like a crappy mom at the end of the night. That is
Yep.
the actual problem to your bedtime
That is the
routine, is
problem.
feeling like you're a crappy mom and
Mhm.
you have yelled at your kids, and that's how you've gotten them into bed. That's the problem.
Yeah. It's
But
where
then it's
yeah, it's where I'm now noticing, because self-awareness queen right here. I'm not always great, but I will be so self-aware to the point of it being hard on myself too often. But the self-awareness is, bedtime used to be such a happy time, and now I'm starting to see a what's the word I'm looking for? I'm starting to see where it's becoming more of a stress. And I don't want my kids, as they get older, to be like, oh, mom's going to be stressed out at bedtime. Oh, we're going to get in trouble at bedtime. I want to break that cycle now.
Which, and it's fine. I mean, we've gone through so many ebbs and flows with bedtime, and we recently just reset at the start of the new year. And we named for our girls, bedtime really feels stressful. I know that you don't like us yelling at you. I don't like yelling either. We can either work together or we can all fight against each other. But we all know how fighting against each other goes. So we got to figure something out.
Yeah.
And that's when you can name, my goal is not to yell at you. But I'm going to be really clear here. 9 o'clock, I am off the clock. 9 o'clock, it is like when I go to work, I am clocking out.
And
things come
what
up.
you say. Mean what you say.
And then it's but what I was also thinking was, I really like watching a show with you guys before bedtime. And even saying, I love that time. We get to cuddle, we get to laugh. It's fun to be able to talk about it afterwards.
Yes.
So 8:30 is going to be our TV time. That's it. That's when we are watching together. But then it's saying, but we've got to figure out what are the steps that need to happen before or in order for that 8:30 time to happen. One thing that we just added to our refrigerator was, got them on Amazon. It's these little, they call them a chore checklist, but we listed steps, because the morning routine and the evening routine, they're actually somewhat similar. And so I was 7:30 p.m., I want you in your beds reading. And I was also 7:30 a.m., I want you sitting on the couch with a book in your hand, because we're about to go to school. I just need you sitting down. That is the line in the sand. 7:30, sit down. If anybody's walking around, it stresses me out.
Yeah.
And that has been really helpful for them. And so then other things on the checklist, it's for my oldest, did you put on deodorant? Have you brushed your hair? Is your backpack ready? These are 10 things, but yet just naming those 10 things and that's it has helped. And you don't take on all the routines at once. So start with the bedtime, even just naming. 9 o'clock is my line in the sand. That can help. And then when the kids are still out, and my wife makes fun of me because with my youngest, she still wants to run out after 7:30. And I'm picking her up and I'm walking her back. And I find myself repeating, it is 7:30. I am off the clock. And I put her back in. I love you. You have to stay. And so even right now, I'm still in the struggle of it, but them knowing that 7:30 time.
Yeah.
And the reason why it's 7:30 for us, I don't know about your kids, but my children are still up, even the oldest, at 5:30 every morning.
See where and this is what I love, because this is what people need to hear. Every family's different. My thing is, I love that my kids sleep till 7:20, because I get up at 6. I now walk the dog. Add that into the mix. I now walk the dog. But there is something that I need. Like you said, you're 7:30. My morning coffee with the sunrise is so important to me. So I'm like, I don't mind a little later bedtime because they'll
Mhm.
sleep a little bit later. They'll
But
sleep
that's
in.
also when
Yeah.
you knowing that about
Oh
yourself, but
yeah.
knowing that you have the bookends, that it's like, you have your 9 o'clock time, but
Yep.
then you have your morning time before the kids wake up. I
Huge.
think that there is power in that. And that's something that it seems so simple,
Yep.
but yet just saying 9 o'clock is the cutoff time
Hmm.
can then inherently lead to that domino.
Right.
Because if you want to tackle homework, like that can fall into place. But honestly, establishing that 9 o'clock time for right now might be the best thing that you can do,
Yeah.
and give it this experiment time. I talk about in the book this idea of a 30-day experiment. You
Okay.
could literally say, kids, for the month of February, we are all experimenting with a 9 o'clock cutoff time. That's it. This is what we're focused on. Can we, in the next month, just get that consistent 9 o'clock time with the 8:30 like show time together?
Yep.
Can we get that solid?
Yeah, I'm gonna
Then,
do this. You can hold me accountable. I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna report back and I'm gonna tell my audience I'm doing it because some people just need to know that there's someone else in it with them.
mhm,
You
mhm.
know, it's like, oh, Nikki's doing this. Okay, maybe there's something. So I'm going to work backward from that and I'm gonna follow up with you in a week and let you know how I'm doing it.
Yeah, because there is just such power in naming the problem
Yep.
and then thinking of what's an actual realistic solution. Because I could have outlined for you, Nikki, from this time to this time, do this. Make sure that you have this system in place. Make sure that you have this going
Yeah.
on. What are you doing for meal planning? What are you doing for grocery shopping? Do you have a consistent time of the week? Let's map all of that out. What about your kids' laundry and clothes they're going to wear the next day? Do you have you cannot take it all on at one time.
Right.
9 o'clock?
Start with that. I love that you're saying that because the amount of times, and you and I were touching on it before we started recording, is we always feel like when we're stuck with something, we have to hire somebody. We have to
Hmm.
hire somebody. I'm going to
Hmm.
hire somebody and they're going to figure out how to manage my home. And then what happens with a personality like me, we'll say the ADHD executive functioning is I'll I'll delegate what my problems are to that person. They'll put in place what they think will work. And then a weekend, I'll be like, nope,
Hmm.
this isn't for me. So
And
you're saying no matter what, on tidying up your calendar, tidying up your bedroom, tidying up anything, you start with the one simple new habit.
yes, because what's going to happen next week is you're going to feel overwhelmed about something with that
Something
bedtime
else.
routine.
Yeah.
But what you're going to have to say, you're going to have to consciously say it to yourself is, Nikki, I'm only focused on 9 o'clock right now. That's it. Put it on your mirror. It becomes your mantra, which is like
Okay.
9 o'clock is the
8
cutoff.
8:30, 8:30.
Yes, 8:30 is
Because I've gotten
8:30
too
is
comfortable with
showtime.
9 and then
So
that's when I'm
then
stressed out. That's when
so
I'm like,
then
I'm
say,
a raging
yes,
bitch at 9.
so then say 8:30 is showtime. 8:30 is showtime. 8 that is it. And then those other things you will tackle once you feel solid in 8:30 is showtime. It's like 8:30 is showtime. 9 o'clock is everybody's in their beds. That's
Yeah.
it. That
Yep.
feels so
Yep.
simple.
Yeah.
And you can name it for your kids of like, this is what we're doing.
I do. It's funny because they do love it when it happens. It's like you get the pushback, they test the boundaries, but when we do it the right way, they are like all of a sudden like, "Mom, we came up with a dance." And
Hmm.
I sit there and I am like, "Put your phone down, you crazy bitch, and watch these two kids perform because these are core memories." They used to do it
100%.
every night when they were 2 and 4. It was the big performance. I had to blink the lights and do the thing. And now they're 8 and 10. And I'm like, when I get those morsels of them still being their silly get along as siblings selves, I'm going to
Yes,
take it.
yes.
And parents, you got to put your phone down
I
when
agree.
those moments happen.
And
Because the
for
first
us
thing I
it's
want to record it, I want to lock it in.
I
I want to
know,
get the
I know.
memory. And then I'm like,
But it's
they
just
want to
like
see
put
my
it
eyes
here.
on them.
I know. And like for us, like what my daughters want at 7 o'clock for us is they want to wrestle. They want all three girls want to wrestle me in their bedroom, and
Yep.
it's this like full on, and now they're very strong.
Oh
But
yeah.
I'm like, you grow girls, like, where to hit. I mean, not hit, but like,
Yes.
but
Yes.
that is like sacred time. That is totally who my daughters are right now.
Yeah.
And that's why, for your kids, if it is the showtime, if it's the performing, just having that moment of joy is what you want. And that can be the spoke
No.
within the wheel that then everything else
Yep.
gravitates towards. Because that's what I get from you and from watching you, is just this deep love for your kids. Like, that's
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
clear. And when
Yeah.
you start a routine with the love that you have for your kids, that's
Yeah.
power. Your
Listen,
goal
that is
isn't efficiency, productivity,
uh-huh.
getting it all in, being able to talk to the other moms and say, "Well, look at us, like my kids." No, the goal is the love that you have for your
Yeah.
kids.
Yep.
And that's
It, it
beautiful.
it is. And I listen to Mel Robbins, who I adore. She's
Oh
like
my
my North
gosh,
Star. She's my North Star. She's just does it for me. And she had on Mary Beck, who's like, if you know the amount of books I've read from cover to cover, Mary Beck, is it Mary Beckworth? The North, she wrote
mhm, mhm.
Finding Your North Star.
Uh-huh.
She was just a guest on Mel Robbins. And the most beautiful thing that I could give to people from that episode, which is what you just said, and I'm going to just reiterate it, is if you can close your eyes and think of waking up in 10 years with the perfect day, what would the day look like? And that I was out on a walk with the dog and I'm like, "Oh my, this is making me so emotional because I could see it so clearly."
Yeah, yeah.
And it was all about peace, my healthy family, having just like being in the moment to know like what I've put my work into is built. And it was all family. It was all about my kids and just creating this safe space for them and for me and having these experiences together. It was not making it on, Forbes freaking top creator list. It was not having a top rated podcast. It was literally like creating a life for me and my kids that I'm just so proud of and I
Mhm,
could watch them
mhm.
go up. Right. So when we're talking about this and our goal to tidy up, isn't the end goal to create more space for ourselves?
Yes, and that making space for what really matters and is important to you, that when you can tangibly name that. And I remember,
Name that.
when I was at my darkest point, I remember talking to my dad and he was like, "Tyler, you're just too young to be this unhappy." And I was like,
Mm.
"Is there actually an age where you should be this unhappy?" And I was like, "No." But yet, you know, I just talked to him and there's some health things going on, and there may be this diagnosis of Parkinson's that he just
Ugh.
called me last week. But he was like, "Tyler, you just have to know that you're doing it right and you have figured it out before it's too late." And I feel like that's how it is with your kids. Like, you're going to get this. You're going to figure it out. Your kids are going to be wonderful helpers in this process. You being able to just name, like, this is really important to me right now,
Yeah.
and you having in the back of your head, like, what's your ultimate goal? That your kids, when they leave you, they're going to want to come back and spend time with mom. They're going to want to hang
Absolutely.
out with you. They're going to want to see that you are fun and invested in their lives and that you're caring and supportive. Like, we're going on a trip to Madrid next month for our February
Oh,
break. And like,
amazing.
my mom is coming along with us. And people are like, "Why does your mom always come along?" And I'm like, "Because I love spending time with my mom." And even the, like, you know, boy mom that I guess my mom is with me, so many moms who have sons are like, "I am so encouraged by you loving spending time with your mom." And I'm like,
My
"Yes,
mom's
I
gonna
love."
call me and go, "See, he spends time with his mother."
Yeah.
She'll send me memes about like how grandmothers live longer when their
Yes.
kids spend time with them. She's like, "See, I'm gonna die early if you don't." I'm like, "Oh God,
Yes.
the guilt
But
trip."
like,
It's
just
hysterical.
knowing that is so important. But I'll tell you this about Mel Robbins too. So I'm reading the Let Them Theory right now, which I don't know if you are, but the day that my book came out, so this was January 7th, my manager was in town. We were prepping for the Today Show. I was supposed to go on the Today Show the next day.
Yes.
And I was like, let's go to Barnes and Noble and let's see if I can find my book. Because I was like, people had seen it. It was this huge moment. And I'm walking up to the store, and it's this huge Mel Robbins event that day. And so my manager and I were like, I'm seeing all these people lined up for Mel Robbins. And
Yes.
I was walking through the Barnes and Noble, and I could not find the book. And I started to do that that anxiety spiral where you're like, I'm not good enough. I wrote
Mhm.
this book. All these people are lining up for her. Where is my book? Is this actually meaningful? So my manager was like, let me go downstairs and I'm going to see if I can find your book, because the Fifth Avenue store is huge.
Oh, yeah.
And so I'm again self spiraling. And as I get a text, my manager texts me and says, I found it. I see Mel Robbins walk through the store in front of me. I'm not at the exact same moment. And I was like, oh my goodness, that was the reminder right now that I needed. That idea of like,
Yeah.
let them. But why do we self sabotage so often and get into this spiral of like,
Mhm.
you're not good enough, you're not fast enough, you're not smart enough, your kids don't love you, all of these things. And it
Yeah.
was this like, oh my gosh, I've got to like
Yes.
literally let that go. And it
Yes.
was watching
Yes.
Mel Robbins walk across in front of
Yeah.
me that I was like, okay, there was
Yeah.
such a like that was a I was like, okay, I got it.
Absolutely.
I got the message.
I love that, and I hope she knows that about herself because I think she gives that reminder to people all the time, every day, right? She's was just on Oprah, and that was her, oh my gosh, dream. I think so many of us have that
Mhm.
dream of like Mel
Mhm.
is our person.
Mhm.
So I love
Mhm.
that. I'm so
Mhm.
glad she's doing so well and deserve. When you see people do so well, and you're like, they deserve this
Yes.
glory moment.
Yes, but it's
That's how
when, I've seen some of the criticism and people are like, but this is such a simplistic sort of outlook.
But that's
And
okay.
I'm
We
like,
need
actually,
simplistic.
we do, which is even going back to your bedtime routine. Like,
Yes.
name the problem and then
Yes.
name what's important to you.
This is
And then
my
the
this is
rest
my mom
falls
right
into
now.
place.
She's like probably like has no idea that I'm doing this. So she's what are you doing? What are you doing? What you um you know what I wanted to ask you, because we talked about the structure and we talked about the simple thing. Can you go into not only your experience, I think your teaching experience and your special education experience can help so many moms who either have
Mhm,
neurodivergent
mhm,
kids or they are neurodivergent. So me being a mom who has ADHD, it's just different. And
mhm,
it's not an excuse. It's just structuring the day. Um, I'll give you an example in case it makes anyone else feel seen and heard. Is I took the iPads and the my son's got his monitor where he plays his game, and I took the internet stick out of it the other day because I was like, that's it. I've
mhm,
lost you guys to the screens, and I'm taking. So I hide the devices. Two things. One, I forget where the devices are. And the next day, when we're all in flow, I forget why I even took the devices. So
mhm,
then I don't follow up with keeping the devices.
mhm,
And that
mhm,
I don't know if that's an overwhelmed parent thing. I don't know if that's just the ADHD, short term memory brain. I'm quick to forgive. But in parenting, like you have to stick to your word. So can
mhm.
you talk a little bit about that from your special needs like
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
experience?
the thing that I see, manifested in the classroom is like the kids who have the backpack that has 15 million different things inside of it. Or like when you hand the paper, they immediately sort of like shove it in, and then they don't know where it's going. And like in the classroom, there are strategies. So like one, oftentimes it's when decluttering is so important. Giving, me
Right.
helping the kids to make sure that they have just what they need and then some sort of regular practice
Yeah.
that for some kids it's like, okay, every Friday I walk over and I'm like, okay, let's just tidy that desk so that it's ready for the next week. It's when things like task lists and reminders I think that are actually very
Yeah.
helpful, that it's like even my when I was talking about my daughters with their like bedtime routine and the morning routine. Like, there's a reason why it is on the refrigerator, because my children are like food savages, like most people, and
Oh
they
yeah.
open that refrigerator 15 times a day. But it is right there in front of them to see. Um, I've worked with kids, even and adults, where there's the special like landing place that sometimes I put like tape on the kid's desk, and it's
Yeah.
like, when I hand you a paper to do it, you're going to put it right here and you're going to start
Oh
jotting. Being
yeah.
really clear about um, what the expectation is of, even like with writing, that I'm like, okay, I'm drawing the line on your paper and we're just going to write half a page, because I know that for you, thinking about filling that whole page is just so overwhelming,
Mm,
that oftentimes thinking about the task and being able to break it into manageable parts is what's so
yeah.
important. Even like on my Instagram, I clean one area of our house each weekday.
Yeah.
Why? Because thinking about cleaning the entire house was completely overwhelming. I have a checklist. I am like almost 10 years in to cleaning one area of the house each weekday, and I still look at that checklist
Yeah.
every morning when I wake up. I set that 15-minute timer, and that is the amount of time that I clean. It's when the timers, the check, those things, they
Yeah. I'm
seem simple, but
right.
they do help. My wife, even, she has, and even for like the time with bedtime,
Yeah.
we used to put in all of these timers into our phone because it would train us. When I heard
Yes.
that, like,
Yes.
7 o'clock timer go off on my phone, it's also
Mhm.
on the kitchen timer. Like, that was my ping. This next thing needs to happen. So often, we have so much technology around us that it's
Yes.
like, you
And it
know,
sometimes the ding, here's where I go guilty. Sometimes the ding makes me look at the ding and then all of a sudden I'm scrolling or
mhm.
I'm checking my comment section or I'm checking my DMs. And then I get mad at myself because I'm bitching about my kids' screen time and I'm lost in freaking space on this thing while
Yes,
they're entertained instead of cleaning the kitchen and getting to the next task.
yes,
So I
yes.
go off course a lot. And I just, I want to remind other people a lot of people who follow me say that I am helping them with their child who has ADHD. So it's not where the mom's like, I have ADHD too. Many do, but they look at me and they're like, wow, you are my son.
Hmm.
You are just like my daughter.
And it's when,
And
you know, what really gets me sort of emotional about it is because I've had so many kids that I've worked with over the years who, and their families just see ADHD as a deficit.
yeah,
They don't
yes,
want to believe that there's something, the way in which their kid might think differently. They don't want the diagnosis. They don't want to talk to the pediatrician or talk to the teachers about strategies to help. But
yeah,
there are so many beautiful aspects. We all think so differently. I may not have a label
yeah.
for how I think, but
Right, right.
ADHD is, it is something that can add beauty. You just have to think about how you are thinking. Like,
Hmm.
how do you, Nicki Marie, think?
Yeah.
You knowing that about yourself. Even with it's funny because my phone is organized, it's hard to see it, but I have these little folders, and my folders are mantras. So one is I am loved. That's where I put my contacts and my messages. I am blessed. That's where I put all of my finance apps. I am curious. That's where I put my podcast. I am organized. That's my notes in my Google Drive. I am creative. That is my like photos in my video app.
Yes.
But then I have one on the third screen that literally says, do not touch. And do not touch, what is in there is
Social
Threads,
media.
Instagram, and TikTok. Because even though I do touch those things, the
Yeah.
fact that it is in that grouping that says do not touch, I read that every time I click on it. And that is just a little reminder that even that
That is,
strategy of like
yes.
organizing your phone based on these sort of like
That is
mantras, it
so
can
simple, but
like
I
it can help. It
yeah,
it
because
really
how many times
can.
do we just do it out of not even realizing we're doing it?
Yes, and then remembering that, like, Oh, I have one that's like, I am connected. But like those little things, it's such a beautiful reminder every time I go to my phone that it's like, my phone actually does help me. And when I'm going to contacts or when I'm FaceTiming, when I'm going to messages, reminding myself, you know what? I am loved because I
Yes.
have people who like to talk to me and I
You
like to,
just
like,
reminded
it's,
me of Stuart Smiley. Remember him?
yeah.
I am loved and I
Yes.
am precious. Yeah.
But again, it's a simple
So
strategy that
responsive.
actually can, I don't know, it can help because I'm not about.
You're creating what so many people talk negatively about, right? And we do it to our kids. I have my kids thinking that the iPad is like the devil. And
Mhm.
you what you're saying just changed my mindset literally, where I'm like, if I start thinking of this as a positive thing, my son can build mansions and cafes and all these things on one of his games. He is brilliant in certain areas of it. So if I can start having a better relationship with this, because I'm hard on myself about this.
And that's when, okay, again, going back to your bedtime routine. If 9 o'clock is Nicki time, 8:30 is showtime as a family. What does it mean for 8 o'clock to be like, okay, if you've done your stuff,
Mm-hmm.
you have it from 8 o'clock to 8:30, which
Yeah.
then inherently allows
Yes.
you then
Yes.
that quiet, calmed, because kids are quiet when they're on their device.
Oh
That
yeah.
quiet, calm time in that 8 o'clock to 8:30 that then sets you up for, I can actually sit down with my kids and watch the show right now.
Yes.
And then at 9 o'clock, you're like, okay, I actually feel like I don't have this like messy, dirty kitchen that I now have to deal with. That's the power of backwards mapping, but then naming what's important and what matters to you.
Yes. Oh, I love this. All right. So I could talk to you all day because I selfishly feel like I have so much to learn from you. But let's talk about where can we find your book? Where can we find more of you? And what can we expect?
Yeah. Yeah. So on Instagram, I'm Tidy Dad. I also have a website, thetidydad.com, which has like my writings and resources and tips. And then the book, you can now get it anywhere bookstores are sold, which is exciting to say. And shop your local bookstore because they will either order it for you or have it, you know, in stock. But what you can expect from the book is, as it's been described, it's like lighthearted and whimsical, but also practical because I am not, people are way too busy to have another organizing book
Mm,
that's just going to give them all of these unrealistic strategies and or not present the author as like having worked through the mess. Like I'm in the thick of it along with everyone else. I am balancing 3 kids, my teaching job, my work is tidy dad, being a husband, trying to still have some semblance of being a human, and like trying to go for a run, trying to, all of those
yeah.
things. I am in the thick of it
Yeah.
too. And I think that readers, I think that they're enjoying that because it's someone who gets it.
And it's a dad. And we're
And it's
not
a
talking
dad.
you don't get you as a good present in the weeds dad, you don't get the limelight that us moms do because we're always just right? So I'm
Yeah.
glad that you can be represented because there are a lot of amazing dads, men out there.
Yeah.
Mine
No. And
being one of them, my stepdad being
yeah.
one of them, my male
Yeah.
cousins being one. Like, there's
Yeah.
so many great guys, and they're not online shouting from the rooftops how great they are.
No, no. And I'm so glad we went to that
Yeah.
movie premiere together.
I
And
know. I'm so glad we met. I'm so glad
yes,
I
no,
have you as a
thanks.
resource and that I could share you with my audience because we have definitely spoken that we need this. And I
Yeah,
think
no,
this is
thanks
going
for
to be a
having
great
me.
episode. Thank you.
Thanks.